Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Creative Insights. This is a fantastic opportunity for students at Bucks College Group to hear directly from industry professionals and learn about life in film, TV and music. This morning we're focusing primarily on film and TV and associated industries. The afternoon sessions are going to be dedicated to exploring the music industry. Remember, you can also catch exclusive podcast sessions today in room A3 featuring even more fascinating industry insights. Coming up at 11:20, we've got Diogo Adatini from Deluxe Rentals and freelance director cinematographer J. William Whittington sharing their career insights. We have music industry panels from Universal Music at 2 o'clock and Digital Orchard and freelancers coming up later in the afternoon. So I'm going to basically be talking here to Stuart, who is Head of People at Universal Pixels.
I am.
And good morning.
Good morning.
And I'm going to be talking to Kathy, who is Director of Production at Emporium Productions.
Hello.
So I think I'm going to start off by asking you a little bit about what your company is doing. So can I turn to you, Stuart, first? What is Universal Pixels?
So Universal Pixels is an award-winning company that rents video equipment to the music, film and TV productions.
Okay. So I know you asked me not to trip you up with technical questions. Can you tell us a little bit more about, when you say video equipment, we're talking about...
So imagine you're going to a stadium gig, you're in the cheap seats, let's say, so you're trying to see the little Lego figure on the stage, can't quite see him, but what you can see is the big LED walls. We provide those LED panels, cameras, control desks, etc., to enable that experience to happen.
Yeah. That sounds really exciting.
It is, absolutely.
And Kathy, can I turn to you? Emporium Productions. Tell me about Emporium.
So Emporium Productions is an award-winning television production company. We're actually based here in Amersham. We have we've a recent affiliation with the college. We've started taking apprentices from the college. Emporium Productions, we mostly make documentaries. You might have watched some of our more well-known ones, such as Rich House, Poor House, Rich Holiday, Poor Holiday, Inside the World's Toughest Prisons, and we make lots more. We're very busy at the moment and recruiting a lot of freelancers.
Okay, and I'm going to turn to. I apologise. Sorry. I'm going to turn to you again. Can you tell me a little bit more about your role within Emporium?
Sure. So I'm Director of Production at Emporium, which basically means I help run the company. The Managing Director is a woman called Emma Reed. We've both been in the industry collectively for many, many decades, so we bring decades of experience to the world of TV production. My main job is running the company, making sure we're efficient, making sure we make money. I recruit people, we find freelancers, I write budgets, I write schedules, and make sure basically that all of the productions are run properly, efficiently, safely, and to make some hopefully brilliant TV.
Amazing. And Stuart, I'm going to kind of ask you the same thing about your role within Universal Pixels.
Yeah, so my role at Universal Pixels is as head of people. So I'm responsible for all things people experience. So when people work within the business, how do they learn, grow, develop? What sort of reward do we offer? What are the responsibilities of each role to ensure that we're delivering outstanding service to our customers? Through to future workforce planning, so how do we make sure in years to come we've got the right bums in the right seats in line with our growth plans.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you some quite similar questions about this actually, because this is what we're trying to do. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to ask you both really the same kind of thing. So if I come for a starter job at Universal Pixels, so I think some of our T-level students are doing some work for you, but other students are not, and they don't know what it's like.
Yeah.
So I come to Universal Pixels maybe for a starter job. I've just left college with my amazing thing in film and TV, or something related. Anyway, what can I expect?
It's a great question. Very broad. What can you expect?
I'm a bit broad, I'm sorry. But
No, not at all. I suppose what you can expect in terms of the company is a really warm welcome into an organisation that really cares about its people. In terms of the type of role that you might step into, a typical entry point is a warehouse technician role. Now, you might be hearing that and thinking, I might as well go and work at Amazon, pushing brown boxes in, being targeted to ship out thousands and thousands of boxes per hour or per minute. That's very much not the case. So our warehouse technician roles, as you rightly say, that some of the students here have got some experience in, is a really pivotal role in what we do, right? So those people are really also involved in the technical side, from things like, yes, picking and packing equipment, making sure it's pulled and it gets to the right place at the right time to deliver amazing shows. But they're also taking that equipment back in, they're testing cables, they're flashing LEDs, and they're gaining exposure to, as I say, the more technical aspects of what we do, which then we hope sets people up for career progression within the business moving forward. But that's a starting point.
So kind of making sure things work is a really important part of that warehouse role.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we always say that you're only as good as your last show, and every show is an audition for the next, right? One of our core themes is the highest of standards, right? We're talking about live events, and so it has to be there, it has to be working, and it has to be right at that moment that show starts. Otherwise, there's big problems. So yeah, it's an absolutely vital role. Pivotal in what we do.
So I will come to you, Catherine.
That's okay. That's very interesting.
So carrying on with this, suppose I'm 18.
Yes.
I'm not 18.
Oh,
really?
I know, right?
I'm shocked.
Suppose I'm 18 or,
Yeah.
or I'm 19 and I've just come out. What does my working day look like? What time am I expected in? When I get up in the morning, what am I doing?
Well, being wildly enthusiastic about going to work to start with.
Of course.
If we stick with the sort of warehouse theme, so our warehouse runs on 2 shifts to cover through from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. So people will work either 8 till 4 or 10 till 6. The reasoning behind that is it covers us for the main range of deliveries, effectively, of equipment, so super important. What you'll be doing is you'll be turning up, having some breakfast in our that's provided in our little kitchen, croissants and all. Getting together for a bit of a sort of informal catch-up with colleagues, both from the warehouse and the wider business. You'll be going into the warehouse for a daily stand-up, and that's where Yossi, our warehouse manager, will talk about the priorities for the day, what's happening, just to make sure that everybody's on the same page. You'll then be designated particular tasks around what those priorities are, to make sure that, as I said before, we're delivering to the highest of standards. There'll be things within some of those days around supporting your growth, your development. So there'll be one-to-ones, there'll be opportunities to go onto a digital learning platform to support your own learning, both that required for your role and that on a discretionary basis tailored to your own personalised career ambition. And then you'll have lunch. All that will happen before lunch. No.
Thank you.
So huge variety. As I'm sure some of the students here can attest to.
So it appears I've been given an earpiece, but I didn't have a mic, so I'm hoping that got picked up. Can someone help me clip this on, please? I'm not sure how this clip works. Okay.
Live broadcasting, eh?
Yeah.
Live broadcasting.
Yeah.
I'll just put this. Click it wherever you like.
You should just keep talking.
Yeah.
Oh, am I supposed to fill this?
Technical functions are something that
all right,
we-
sorry.
that happen occasionally.
You didn't have an earpiece.
So
then.
hopefully,
Get him
some
to
of the questions
talk.
got
Get
picked
him
up
to
on
talk.
there. I'm really hoping so. But anyway, it sounds like a really flexible kind. There's a certain, because you talk about a daily stand-up, which is kind of a briefing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it sounds like there's something slightly different to do each day. So it's quite a flexible. You have to display a certain amount of adaptability and flexibility for this.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I think as much as you can try and plan absolutely everything and lock everything down, I'm sure you'll agree.
It doesn't always go right first time.
Well, it doesn't always work like that, right? And you are responsible for being agile and responsive to your stakeholders, so your customers, and their needs and project needs, and things do change last minute. So yes, there's a plan, and it's that best laid plan, but it doesn't always go 100% like that.
I'm going to go through to Kathy, and I'm going to ask quite a similar thing. So we've had quite a lot of the story, if you like, of working for Universal Pixels. I'm going to kind of ask you the same things about Emporium.
You might have to ask me the questions again.
Okay.
I can't remember that far back.
Can I remember that far back? Let me see. So I think I'm going to kind of start with the same thing. So we know that Emporium make documentaries, experts in factual documentary production. So again, suppose I am a T-level student, or suppose I am 18 and I've just got my diploma and I'm coming out to work for an Emporium. I'm present in an interview. What does my job look like when I'm starting off with you?
Well, I think your job looks, well, it almost looks like whatever you want to make it in TV. So you've got to come in, you've got to be a sponge. You've got to be able to soak up as much as possible, as quickly as possible. It's a very fast-paced environment, and you need to have like loads of enthusiasm and a real thirst for knowledge. You can never stop learning in this industry, because obviously it's always evolving. Like, you know, you think you've got one way of working one day, and then it will change. So when I first started, Umatics, are you too young for the Umatics? You might even be too. So we used to use these big clunky tapes. You might not even know what a VHS is, but a Umatic is like a VHS tape, but it's this big. And obviously the industry's evolved so massively over the last 30 years, which is the span of my career, that you can never start something and think that this is how it will be. It's always going to be different. Every day is different. As you said, every day is unpredictable. There's a lot of firefighting, and so you've got to be quite a robust individual. You know, if you think it's going to go one way, it won't. It will go that way. Things grow, things shrink. You know, you might have a working day such as 8 till 6, but you will be impressing me and the other senior people if you come in that little bit earlier, and if you check that, you know, that the office is set up and everything's perfect, and you make that cup of tea or coffee for the boss, because then you're getting your face in front of the boss, then that will trigger communication, then they'll recognise you exist. And I mean that in the best sense, not that they wouldn't know you existed, they would know you existed, but you need to push yourself forward, but in a very subtle way. You need to show that you've got that desire to be there, because there's 100 other people that have. And so if you've not got that desire or thirst to learn, it won't work, and you'll slip away quite quickly. And it's very much a freelance industry, yeah. So people come and go, and as you go, your reputation will go with you, and people will take you on their journey. So, you know, we have directors, producers, cinematographers, sound people. Imagine every single job in making a television production, which you've probably all tried. You've got to impress everyone, because they're going to take you to the next place. But if you make it, it's very exciting. It's different every day. This is going to sound really silly, but it's almost a hobby, because if you love your job, it's a hobby, and then you're really lucky, because then if you've got something you love doing, it doesn't feel like a job.
I think this is a message that I'd like to get out to all the students in this area, is life's too short to do a job that you don't enjoy, right? And figuring out what it is that you want to do.
Yeah.
what you actually like doing, not what sounds cool or what you think you want to do.
This does sound pretty cool, though.
It does sound pretty cool, though. So being a director sounds pretty... So I want to be a director, right? Being a director sounds really cool. It's like, I'm going to be a director. I'm going to stand there and have a megaphone and shout at people, right? But obviously, if I come in to you and say I want to be a director, and I'm... Let's again, I'm 18 now. I'm 18 now.
Yeah.
I come into you and I say I want to be a director, and I have no experience at directing, really. Maybe I've done a college course and I've maybe directed some short films. I might have done some quite good work directing short films, but it's college work. And what you're probably not, unless I'm amazing, and probably not then, you're not going to hire me straight away as a director and tell me to direct a film. So what's my starter job?
You're starting as a runner or trainee production assistant, and runner means runner.
So
It's literally run.
Yeah.
It's like the director wants a coffee, run. Get the director a coffee. Or cables. Cables are broken. They need to get from A to B as quickly as possible. You run, and you do it. And it's just being there, being willing, being enthusiastic, problem solving, and willingness, isn't it, to do anything and try anything?
Yeah, I think it's a strong message to send out. And these running starter jobs, I mean, it's the equivalent of tape op in the music industry. Not that they use tape anymore, but they still call it that sometimes. Is this kind of the person that just has to go almost learn all the various jobs by.
Yeah. And in a way, it is the best place to start because you see all the jobs and you see all the departments and you get to be nosy and inquisitive about all of them. And so then you find your path, hopefully. And also you might think you've got a path, but then you meet someone else and they take you on a different journey, but it doesn't mean you can't then veer back to what you really want to do.
It's those relationships, isn't it, are absolutely key. Just saying yes to things, showing willing, learning, and building those relationships.
And having a smiley face.
Ooh.
Having a smiley face opens up the world. If you go in with a face like a... What's the word?
Don't know if we can use it.
We're live streaming. Let's.
But you don't want to employ people that look sort of as though they're angry or annoyed or disengaged. So you've got to go in with an open mind, open face, be smiley, be enthusiastic, and people ask you to do more.
So resting grumpy face is not great.
You've got to leave that at home.
Yeah. I'm gonna stick with you for a little bit, and I'm going to ask you a bit. I'm going to be asking, if you hadn't figured out, I'm going to be asking quite similar questions from your quite different bits of the industry, because I think it's really useful for people to be able to see the things in common and the things that are different. So I think I want to talk a little bit about what makes a production successful, kind of in both your areas, really. So what's the difference between a good production and, I'm not going to say a bad production, because of course you don't make bad productions, but maybe a production that you feel could be improved, or what are the factors that go into making that good production good?
That's a really, really difficult question.
I'm sorry.
Because as you said, every production's an audition for the next production, and every production's the learning for the next. So I'll give you Rich House, Poor House. I think we're on, believe it or not, series 10 of Rich House, Poor House. Now, we do know how to make it, but it doesn't mean we get it right, because we can't predict what's going to go wrong, and there's so many moving parts. But ultimately, to give a brief answer, a good production is one that ends up on budget, with some profit, on schedule, and without any legal claims against us.
Very important, the last bit.
Very important, that last
And the legal claims come later. They're fun.
I'm going to ask you the same thing, Stuart, about, I mean, obviously it's a show quite often rather than a production.
Sure.
But
I mean, I'd echo those sort of main points. I think one thing I'd add, so we did the Niall Horan tour last year. And we were lucky enough to take the whole business to go and see his show at the O2. So you've definitely got the sort of the delivery of the project. You've got the commercials. You've got the no legals, obviously, after after the event. But for us, we kind of see our ultimate vision as contributing towards the audience having a kind of transformative experience almost, right? So if you've ever been to a live music show and you've watched it and then you walk out and you kind of just got this little buzz, this little energy about you, a little bit wide-eyed. And that's where, for me, Niall Horan's sort of the best example. Now, if you'd have asked me a year ago from now whether I knew any Niall Horan songs or listened to Niall Horan on Spotify, the answer would have been no, in all honesty.
Sing any of his songs?
I mean, I could, but everyone would leave.
I don't know any of his songs.
Slow hand, no? Okay, it's getting sidetracked. So we went to see his show, right? And we've provided some of the equipment, and there couldn't be a better example, I don't think, of an audience transform. So we're sitting there and we're watching the show, and it's a great show, you know, enjoying the music, but also what you're seeing on the big LED walls is, as the cameras pan to the audience and just the emotion that's on people's faces, you're hearing the audience sing every single word, and then you're walking out and seeing the big, huge queue to get into the tube station by the O2, and people's eyes are just like saucers, and just the energy is still there, and that's what we contribute to, and that, I think, is that almost immeasurable part of what makes a successful show in my eyes.
So I imagine for something like that, for a show like that, or for a show like Rich House Poor House, there's a lot of moving parts that make that happen. And by moving parts, I mean people. If you see what I mean, there's a lot of people doing a lot of different things that are involved in putting that together. So could you talk a little bit about what some of those people do, or what some of those people in your area do?
Yeah, I'll sort of talk from an internal perspective on that one. So within Universal Pixels, so we also then hire freelancers who go and work on the actual shows themselves. But you know, internally, people are working on that show from ranging from our sort of commercial department, who have the relationships with the production originally. So those first discussions, we've got a projects team who are then thinking about, okay, it's not just that show, but it's a whole almost global tour, right? So there's a lot of logistics that go with that, a lot of planning, a lot of transport, and that projects team is focused on making that happen end to end. We've got a technical team who advise on the best or the right technologies to use to achieve the desired results. And that's just sort of the front end, I suppose, of the business. We've already talked about the absolute importance of the warehouse technician roles. So those people are making sure that the correct product gets pulled and that it gets sent out to the right place on the road at the right time, because without the equipment, there's no show. And then when that equipment comes back in, they're also, as I mentioned, testing and making sure that equipment is still working and sort of reset to how it should be. So, yeah, huge amount of input across full front-facing business.
And Kathy, I'm going to kind of ask something similar about a documentary or a show that you do, because there's stuff that I know about, right? There's stuff that, even as a media novice, I know that there's a camera person who takes the pictures. I know that there is a director who shouts at people through a megaphone, or doesn't do that these days, but you know,
it's usually the same person these days.
It's quite, and it's well, exactly. Yeah. That's quite often the same person these days. So again, how does that work in terms of roles? It's quite interesting that the director and the first camera are probably the same person.
Well, in the world of documentary, we're the poor man of television. So we use PDs. So that's one person who is the producer, the director, the camera person, quite often the sound as well. They'll be supported by an AP, possibly a DV director, a second camera and a runner. But tiny crews make documentaries. Dramas, different ballgame altogether, massive crews, DOPs, gaffers, riggers, all sorts of people.
Term gaffer, what does a gaffer do?
I don't know. I don't work in drama. Do you know?
Next question.
I think, but in back to Rich House Poor House, the very start we have a casting team. So there's a role as a casting researcher or a casting producer, and literally they're searching for people that want to either swap house, rich house, poor house, or go on holiday for rich holiday, poor holiday. Believe it or not, rich wedding, poor wedding coming your way. Know anyone who wants a poor wedding? Send them my way. That's going to be a harder find. And then once we're cast, we're then researching what we're going to shoot, and we're scripting and we're writing the scripts, and then we go on the shoot, and then it doesn't go to script, and then you've got to just firefight and make a plan. Then the contributors throw their toys out of the pram and decide they don't want to play anymore and don't want to work, so then you've got to work to bring them back on board. And eventually, by the end of a week, you might have a film in a can. Then obviously that goes off to the post-production house where we employ the editors, and the editors will cut together the rushes in the offline, and that goes off to the online editor, the grader, the sound mixer, and so there's loads and loads and loads of people, loads of different roles involved in putting together that 1 hour of television.
So I've heard this term in other industries is pipeline. You have a kind of a series of people who will have to do a job to bring the thing eventually to your screen.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know the difference between an offline and an online editor, for example. So yeah, I'm a music person. I'm not a film person. I don't know. What does that mean?
Okay, so when you've got your rushes, your media, that's auto-conformed, which means it's all put together in the edit. The editor will then sort it into folders and files, and then they begin to cut it together, probably in a lower resolution than it was shot, because it's massive, and it would just kill the edit suite. It'd be too clunky. So they cut it together in a low resolution, and we have a rough cut, a fine cut, and a picture lock. So that's the different stages where we share it with the commissioner or the exec, and they give notes, and then we go and polish it again, make the cuts, make the fixes, get to fine cut, do it again, and then eventually we get to picture lock. That's where everyone says they're happy, and you no longer make any changes to the picture. I wish that were the case. There's always someone that makes a little change, which is quite annoying, but it is what it is, and we'll make that change. And it might be for legal reasons. It might be we've not got permission for someone to be in it. It might be that we've used some archive we don't have permission for, and so we've just got to make sure it's perfect before it gets to the online.
Okay.
And the online is then where we conform it, and the low res media is replaced with the full res media, and so that's the online process. And you add your captions and that sort of stuff, and then the grade is where you colour it in, make it look pretty.
I think there's a message here in this process that I suspect we're going to hear again from some other contributors through the day about the thing of having to go backwards and forwards and make corrections and things like that.
Yes.
And I think it's quite easy as a creative person to kind of take it to heart sometimes. It's like, oh my God, the thing that all the work I've done and my special darling baby bit, and they want to cut it. And I think it's important not to take that to heart.
Absolutely. This is a really good point. Sort of criticism needs to be taken as constructive criticism. It's a learning process. So if your work is criticised, it's not a bad thing. It's take that on board and learn from it and improve.
Yeah.
That's all. And none of us are perfect. I mess up all the time. I could do better.
I never mess up, apart from with microphones and things. But I think that is a sort of important message, because it is something that I see, and something that I've done myself is I've done something and somebody comes back and says, that's not quite right, can you change? It's like, oh no, my beautiful work is terrible, or to get annoyed. And I think learning not to do that is quite important.
Yeah.
I think it can be an instinctive reaction, right?
Yeah.
And it's just that learning to manage one's own emotions comes with knowledge and with practice over time, right? So, speaking personally, it can still happen, right?
Yeah,
You view something through a certain lens. You've given your everything to it, and you get some feedback that maybe wasn't as you hoped. But yeah, you quickly learn to kind of to take that, to turn it around and use that to add more value and create a kind of better package than you went in with.
The customer's always right.
Yeah.
Comes back to, and that our customer is the channel commissioners, and so quite often they'll make decisions that you think are really wrong and aren't to the benefit of the series. And we've seen series perhaps be not as successful due to the naivety of decisions made, so certain series could have been better had we not had to take the instruction, but we have to take it.
Yeah.
And we know it could have been better. We know that this particular series could have sort of tugged on the heartstrings and much more and engaged the viewer much more, but it just became a bit sort of bam, 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 and sort of lost its way and its heart. But that's what the commissioner wanted. So that's what we give them.
Okay. So I'm going to ask for. I'm going to ask you to tell me some stories now, without opening yourselves to any kind of legal action, which would come later, as you said. But I'm just wondering if you have any kind. I might turn to you, Stuart, first. Tell me a story about a thing. That sounds terrible, doesn't it? But can you tell? I mean, we have these big events that come on. Can you kind of maybe walk us through the process from start to finish? And this sounds like I'm asking you to do a lot, doesn't it?
What,
can you maybe walk us through in a sort of
a show?
Yeah, walk us through a show.
So yeah, I mean, from our sort of internal perspective, some similarities to what I described previously, really. So the fact that a show is potentially going to happen is getting bandied about between our stakeholders. We're not involved in the conversation probably at that point, but that's where the relationships come in from our commercial team, effectively, right? It's about knowing what's going on in the industry. It's about having your finger on the pulse and your ear to the ground and being constantly curious, right? Just wanting to be ahead of the game. Let's say then we get engaged onto a project. So what's then happening is our commercial team are starting to do the early stages of speccing out that project. So what does the first iteration of the design of the show look like? And then obviously what is our contribution to that potentially going to be?
Can I ask about the commercial? Because this is a new role to me, the commercial team. So these are the people that essentially kind of they seek out things to do. They're kind of like getting in touch with promoters or getting in touch with artists and saying, we can provide this service.
Yeah, so they'll have potentially existing relationships or be trying to track down possible new relationships. But their role essentially is to find, build, nurture and grow relationships with decision makers that are ultimately specifying video onto music, film and TV.
So are these normally people who come up from, I mean, are these people who need technical knowledge who come up through technical roles, or are they people who are kind of marketing type people or?
It might vary in other businesses, but in our business, it's people that have come up through the ranks. They've come up sort of from warehouse role. I mean, our commercial director is a great example here. Obviously, he's some time into his career now, but he started in a large business doing effectively the same thing in the warehouse, worked his way through into the technical side a little bit, but more into the project side, and then from the project side into commercial role, and then ended up as one of the founders of Universal Pixels and is commercial director and is really well regarded for his relationships within the industry. So yeah, it's one of the routes from that very first starting point that might be at kind of, as you described, 17, 18, first job. That commercial avenue is one that people certainly can and do take.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm looking at your own career journey very briefly, because you have quite an interesting background. You didn't start off in you know, in showbiz, really?
No, I started off in the opposite, really. I started off in banking for 10 years. So, yeah, do you want me to give a quick two-minute synopsis?
Two-minute resume.
Yeah, sure. Let me see how quickly I can run through this. So, yeah, left school, didn't know what I wanted to do, and as I was speaking to some of the later guests about earlier, had a really terrible careers conversation in a cupboard with a guy that obviously had 5 options that he could give to people, none of which I ended up pursuing. Got an admin job in a call centre in a bank, spent 10 years progressing through there, moved to London, and eventually realised I was probably leading too much of the banking lifestyle and was going to end up with a real health crisis if something didn't change. Fast forward a couple of years, and I'd left my banking job to have a 2-year career break, or what I thought would be a 2-year career break, as a personal trainer in Gymbox, Covent Garden. Because of the location, I think met a lot of people in the creative industries, including movie producers, directors, actors used to train in there because they'd stay at St Martin's Lane Hotel and they could use that gym. And through that, I met a guy in the US called Mark Twight, who was the cast trainer on the first 300 movie. So if you've ever seen the 300 film, and they're all like jacked and in great shape, well, Mark Twight ran a gym in the States that made that happen. Built a relationship with Mark, and then fast forward to 2016, and he asked me to work with him as a cast personal trainer on the Justice League film, shot at Leavesden.
Yeah.
And off the back of that, got asked to go and lead the cast training for the first Aquaman movie in 2017. So responsible for training Jason Momoa, Patrick Wilson.
So are you responsible for his body?
Not now, and it's so that was my my
achievement.
At his peak when he was Aquaman, though, right?
I mean, he's a great guy, and he's, you know, I think he's naturally in pretty good shape, and he's a huge dude, like, naturally. But yeah, so obviously that was my kind of formal entry into the creative industries and the film world, and that came through relationships. It was just because I'd done some learning in the PT world with Mark, who happened to be doing these 300 and was training Henry Cavill for Man of Steel at the time. So yeah, that all came through relationship. After Aquaman, I'd spent the year in Australia away from my wife. We won't go into the depths of that now, but she remained in London. Came back and wanted to sort of settle down into a job that leveraged my training skills, my people skills, etc. And she was the HR manager at Gymbox, so we'd had a few dinner table conversations about what the world of people and HR looks like. And so, got my first opportunity in HR again through relationship. It was somebody that I'd been training and business coaching in the gym, but he owned a photography production company, so did my first people role there in photography production, and have since worked with talent agencies and various other creative businesses before finding my way to Universal Pixels in Feb last year. So a bit longer than 2 minutes, but that's my
There you go. So
20 years.
I think I'm hearing we've got about 5 minutes to go, so I think I'm going to take a bit of it, which I think you would back up Kathy as well, is that there's the importance on jumping on opportunities when they're available, because there must have been, I don't know how many personal trainers Gymbox in Covent Garden, or who were working at Gymbox in Covent Garden, and how many of those people wanted to get into the film industry. Yeah. But there was one person who kind of saw an opportunity and made those relationships and jumped on it. Yeah. And here you are.
Here I am.
And I think that's the thing. Would you say the same is true in Emporium or in documentary making in general?
My story and journey is not as exciting as yours.
I'm sure it is.
I bet it is.
It's not that exciting. No, I did go to university. After university, my mum and dad thought I would come home and be a teacher, and I just didn't ever go home. So just never go home. Don't do what your mum and dad want you to do. Do what you want to do. And I said I was going to get a job in TV, and my dad said, don't be stupid. You need a pension. That is a good thing to have, by the way. I sort of you know, your mum and dad are there saying, do this because you need these benefits, you need this pension. It's like, when you're 20, you don't look forward to when you're 65. Like, why would you bother?
To be fair, the teacher pension's pretty good.
Yeah, the teacher pension is good. So if you do want a nice retirement, do be a teacher. If you don't want a nice retirement, work in TV. But yeah, again, it was just opportunity. I was just temping in London at a company called Logica, nothing to do with TV. Again, just meeting people, told people what I wanted to do. And someone said, oh, I've got a friend that does that. And so I met this friend in a pub one night, and there's this book, I think it's called The Knowledge, and he went through and went, right, to this company, this company, this company. And I sent 100 CVs out, and I got a job. And not really, I've worked in commercials, pop videos, comedy, live TV, so like the Frank Skinner Show, Hale Show, fantasy football, World Cup, and then I sort of sidelined into documentaries. I'm not really sure how that happened, because live TV like this is super exciting. Documentary is a sort of more of a long game TV. This live stuff is you've got an end game. You've got it's done, it's over, and that is a euphoric feeling. Documentaries a little bit more sort of agonising, and the ability to go off schedule or overrun or lose the rushes, or there's so many things can go wrong in documentary. There's plenty that can go wrong in live TV, obviously, but the sort of it's almost not allowed to. The show must go on in live TV. But anyway, yeah, I ended up, I didn't want to be a production manager. I wanted to be a researcher, producer, director. Actually, I wanted to be Kate Adie. No one will know who that is. You might know who it is. Kate Adie was a journalist on the BBC, a news reporter. But I probably wasn't tough enough to be that journalist, because you've got to be quite heartless, I discovered, because I did do journalism for a little while, but you've got to be ready to tell anyone's story and be quite cutthroat. Whereas telly's a bit gentler. But yeah.
So I think, again, the importance of recognising and jumping on opportunities when you see them. So if you leave here and you get a job at Pinewood, and you're offered a job at Pinewood doing the security gate or something, still do it, because you get the opportunity to meet people and impress them. I think we are more or less winding up now. We have a couple of minutes left. So I'm just going to say thank you very much to my guests.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you to Stuart, thank you to Kathy. We have...